Alright, this is an instructional video for how to make a gingerbread house template using manila folders for our materials for building the walls and the structure. And for this you're going to need manila folder, most certainly more than one, a ruler for measuring out, pencil would be ideal more than a pen because you may have to do some erasing, and then scissors for cutting that out. Now, what we want you to know is I'm going to dictate one size of this house to you, and then other than that, a lot of creativity can come into play. And that is that I need the sides to be from 1 to 5 inches by 4 inches. So that may not be showing well on the camera as I'm working upside down, but one edge, okay, of the side of your house needs to be 5 inches by 4 inches as a rectangle. And I'll show you how to lay that out in just a moment. And once you have that side of the house, you have some freedom to decide if your house is going to be a little bit shorter and squattier this way, if it's going to be taller and skinnier that way. There's going to be a front and a back of your house, so what is going to be the height of the roof and things of that nature. So let's get started right away. Alright, so take yourself a manila folder and open it up. And I think it's best if you start on something that's already a known straight edge. Okay, so the seam of the folder here. And I'm going to take my pencil, and again I'm shooting for 4 inch by 5 inch. I'm going to go ahead and make a definite line on this crease. So lining up the edge of the ruler, making a dark definite line that I'm happy with. And then from there I need to come up 4 inches or 5 inches. Doesn't matter which one I start with. So I'm starting at 14 going up to 10, so that ends up being a total of 4. I tend to not want to have a ruler start on an edge. Okay, so if I were working this upside down, I'm not starting from 0 going up to 4 inches because sometimes there's a gap on the bottom of the ruler. Alright, so if this end is 4 inches, and you don't have to label this, I will, then I know that I have to come over 5 more inches. Alright, and so I need to line up here, and say I'm choosing 2, and come over 5 more inches. 2 plus 5 would be 7, and make a little dot. Come up, maybe halfway up, and make a little dot, and come up above that, and make a little dot. And I want 3 dots at least I'm going to line up, and it's important that when you're doing this that you try to stay parallel to the edge of this. Okay, so what I'm saying is that if I were lined up here 2, I'm coming out 5 inches away, and the ruler were at this angle, this is not going to be 5 inches from that spot because this is not parallel. Now we don't have a engineering or a drafting T speed square for you guys to work with. You just got to kind of pay attention to your edges here. Alright, once I have those dots, I can go ahead and line those up. Again, we like to have 3 dots. And maybe that's a lighter line, because I'm going to double check that I did make this totally square off to each other. It's going to end up being what we call plumb. So 1 to 6 is 5, I'm good. Alright, so if I want to make a darker line to make this more permanent, then I can. But then, this is 4 inches high, okay, 5 inches across. If I make a mark here, I'm working from 10 inches down to 6, and if I make a kind of perpendicular line there, and on the other side I'm working from 9 inches, stopping at 5, because this is 4 inches difference. I've got 2 definite lines that I can now connect. This is my sidewall. And again, this is going to dictate everything. Let's go ahead and cut that out. It's okay if you go a little bit beyond where those 2 lines join, because this side is going to dictate the front and or back, both of the house. All right, now you're gonna need to make 2 of these sides because we're going to create your house as a 3D model and put together with tape. Make sure everything looks sound before we take it apart and then put this on top of dough to roll. Now it is time to decide, I'm gonna flip this around, which way I'm gonna orient this. Okay, so what I mean by that is, here's one that's already established. For this front of the house, I've established that I'm going to orient this in this manner. Okay, that it's going to be longer that way. If I decided that I want the side of my house to be a taller, skinnier house, then this, as you can see, hopefully, this sort of the front of the house doesn't work because the side of the house is coming up taller than the bottom of the pitch of my roof. All right, so whichever way I want to go, make a decision and go with it. So let me make this one a tall, skinny house. The way we figure out the pitch of our roof in the front of our house is line up the side of your rectangle, your 4x5, in whichever orientation you choose. Line it up on the bottom, make sure everything is flush. Make a hard, heavy line, understanding that this folder is soft and it may kind of move some as you trace it. All right, and I'm gonna square that off. That's like the top of my house. And a definite line here. Okay, and then I need to find a point that's equidistant between the two. Well, if this is 4 inches wide, if I did it right, 8 to 12 is 4, then half of 4 is 2. So I need to come in 2 inches, so I'm looking from 7 to 11, choosing 9, and a little dash. 7 to 11, choosing 9, and a little dash. And that's like what's going to be called a midline. And maybe at the bottom, 7 to 11 going 9. Now once I line these up, I'm going to do that kind of light. This is the midline of my house. Now I'm just going to extend that midline further up the page. Okay, I'm kind of just eyeballing that looks equal on both sides. Alright, and once that I have this midline, I start figuring out the peak of the house. It's just kind of playing with some measurements. So if I go ahead and lightly draw this across the top of my house, I can make little dots to see what, say from 9 to 7, a 2-inch rise would look like. Maybe 9 to 7.5 here, 1.5 inches. Maybe coming up another 1/2 inch. 9 up to 6, a full 3 inches. So this house is 5 inches tall and I'm 3 inches above that. Okay, and from there, I really just have to make light lines, maybe dotted lines that kind of connect the side. To get an idea. Okay, that's really not very tall. It's a gingerbread house that I'm planning to coat with frosting as if it's in the snow, and anyone who's been to a house in the snow knows that a house with a roof with a pitch that flat would collapse. Alright, liking that better. I might try this. I'm liking that enough, I'm going to make it permanent. Okay, that's the pitch of my house. So if I did one side, and again I went up 3 inches, so house was 5 inches tall, 3 inches, so 8 overall to the point. Then if I trace that down the other side, in theory, I should have 2 equal triangles. Perhaps isosceles, I don't know. All right, let's quickly cut this out. Because once I have this front or back of the house, we're going to see that the next layout is not as challenging. Because I'm going to do it from tracing, not from measuring. And so it's this angle that is the pitch of the house that I'm going to recreate on another piece by just using that angle that we've already established. Now, if you want to get crazy with it, I would fold this in half to see if they line up. I really wouldn't do that because then this is going to be all wonky and lose its stability. Just trust that you know your math. All right, so this angle, it might be that that works out to fit the rest of the paper. It is not, it's too big. So that's not going to work. But at the very least, this top, I've done some of the work by borrowing this edge. Okay, so again, it might have been that this, if I didn't have such a tall house, might have been able to trace, reuse this part. Can't do that, it's not long enough. But I can at least use this edge over here. Okay, to trace that. Now I'm going to see actually that I have a problem with this tab down here. And is that something that I should not mess with? Yep. All right, so change in plan. I don't like the fact that this corner is missing, but I'll at least borrow part of this to do my tracing this way, hold down firmly against it so the paper doesn't buckle on you, that way and that way. And then I'm going to cut this out. Oh, missed one. Line it back up. I'd like to say I did that on purpose, but I did not. Line it back up. Now cut it out. These should be replicas of each other. All right, before we go too much further, Cinevello, just sign your masterpiece so we know who this belongs to. And from there, front and back, one side, I need to get a side traced out and cut out before I deal with the roofs. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll label them. Side.